Yeah. Please tell me that I can't, that I won't, that I fail, that I'll never make it out, yeah. Please tell me all the bad, never good, fill my head full of every single doubt, yeah. Please say any negative thoughts, I pop off when I hear people say I cannot. I get off to the thought of proving everyone wrong, I won't stop to the top, so you better back off and get lost. I'ma stay loud, stay proud, never running out, never heading south. I'll be spreading out, call it word of mouth, can't put me down, I'll be getting loud. You can have your doubts, not what I'm about, have your cloud, it be raining now, I keep making sound, go another round, I'm legend bound, can't stop me now.
You don't wanna fuck with me, a slow burn like a disease. Just tell me that I can and I'll show you things that you couldn't believe. Just tell me that I can. Just tell me that I can. Just tell me that I can. Just tell me that I can.
And hello and welcome to Magical Journey. I am your host, Daniel Cahoon, and today we're going to talk about a topic that is very timely because it is about the dark half of the year, which is the part of the year that we are in. The dark half of the year starts at the beginning of the summer equinox, when you have the longest day of the year and kind of the longest night of the year. They're like equal parts. I didn't say that right, but you know what I'm saying. Anyway, but before we do that, I'm going to do some housekeeping right quick and let you guys know about my other social media. It is very important, and also the website for magicaljourney.com. If you have not found magicaljourney.com, it is spelled just the way it is spelled on all of my platforms. It's a great site. It has all the links you need to all the places that's important on the internet, as well as some really great playlists from my channel and some guest spots that I've done from other shows. And I'll be updating those and adding to those from time to time. So definitely check that out and go on there. And on the homepage, there is a section I have not talked about before, but I am ready to start talking about that. And that is a section toward the middle there that is a booking section for booking readings with me. So if you're interested in having your cards read by me, please do go and take advantage of that. There are several different options for that, and also I believe I added pendulum work to that as well, and there are several different options at very affordable prices for that on there, so please do go check that out. The other thing that I want to talk about is Magical Journey on Facebook. I have a page and a group. Both are important. Like the page, follow the page. The page will give you updates on what's going on here. It will also give you some event pages for lives and upcoming recorded shows, mostly lives. And those are really important because you'll have updates. You can ask questions and engage with each other on there. And you can also engage with the people who I am interviewing when I interview people on there. So this is important. And the group is very important as well. Not only do I share updates and information about the channel, but I also have other posts that I add on there as well. And you can engage and add posts as well. Just because I do the majority of posting does not mean that I do not allow members to post. So go on there, Magical Journey on Facebook, the group, and look me up and join us. I would appreciate that. Also, you can find me on TikTok. I do not update it right now as currently as I used to, And I will probably try to keep updating it a little more in the coming days and weeks and months and hopefully years. Um, Kind of fell away from TikTok for a little bit, but I am starting to get back into that. And yeah, there's that. There is an Instagram page. Honestly, I do not work with Instagram a whole lot because I just don't have a lot to post on there right now. I do have some older photos of, and a couple of recent photos of paranormal activity that I have added to that. They're all my stuff. I think I have all my stuff on there. I don't think I have anything historical on there right now. But check it out. Also, Magical Journey on there. I go by the same name and the same spelling on all platforms. So, without going into anything else, because there's really no other platforms that I'm working with right now, let's talk about the dark side of the year. So, from the longest day of the year, which is the summer solstice, until now, there is a shortening of days and a darkening of nights. And that's what we call the dark half of the year. At first, we don't notice it that much. It's still summertime, and the days seem pretty long still. But then all of a sudden, we notice one day, it's like, oh, it's 6 o'clock. There should be 2 more hours of daylight, but there's not. And we discover, oh, it is that time of year. It is the dark cycle, the dark half of the year. And there's some things that happen this time of year that are kind of fun and kind of good, like the holidays that we have. Halloween is coming up. It's also Samhain for those who participate in Samhain, and we'll talk about the differences of those, and we'll talk a little bit about some traditions that revolve around both of those coming up here in a moment. And then, of course, there's Thanksgiving, kind of controversial these days, but we still celebrate Thanksgiving. Some people do. And then everybody's favorite time of the year, Christmas and Yule. And we'll discuss a little bit about those as well today. And then we're going to talk about a little bit about just how we just naturally slow down some this time of year, and some of the reasons behind that, and some of the things that we do this time of year whenever the weather gets colder and darker, and we're just kind of like going, oh, it's not really great to be outside today, so what are we doing? So we'll talk about some activities with that as well. And we'll talk about some ways of surviving the dark season. But we'll also talk about what the dark season, the dark time of the year, what it represents toward the ending as well, because that's a really fun experience. And Yule marks a very important time for the dark cycle. And we'll talk about that as well. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the seasons. We go from first harvest in summertime to second harvest in summertime, and then the third harvest, which falls on or around October 31st. Okay. So this third harvest is the last harvest of the year. It is where the last of the food and so forth is gathered. And it's kind of an end of the work cycle for those who do farming and so forth like that in the agricultural areas. And of course, at one time, everybody harvested their own food, and they all did were very self-sufficient. There were no stores to go to. There was none of this stuff that we have today, modern conveniences. So everybody kind of relied on their own supply and demand, so to say. And it was really important for people to be able to keep up with this. And so the inventing of the seasons and the cycles, learning that planting in springtime, and then watching things grow spring through summer, and tending your gardens and fields and so forth during those times. was important. And then, of course, by midsummer, you got the first harvest of a few things, like some of your grains and stuff, and some fruits and vegetables began to be harvested during first and second harvest. So it was very important for people to acknowledge, especially during that time, the seasons and what the seasons represented for them in survival mode. So in survival mode, obviously, when we started getting to the dark half of the year, it was time for, like, you got less sun, so there was less energy being produced in the plants, and the plants cue to go, oh, we must ripen now because we have done all of our growing, so now we're going to go into ripening. So that's what that was really all about. Some of the early, or some of the concepts that we have now, that kind of relate to this time of year, such as like traditional foods. You get more foods like pumpkins and gourds and turnips and root crops, lots of root crops and so forth this time of year, and so forth, that are like bread baking. A lot of that goes on this time of year because the house has cooled down and so forth. So there's a lot of that. We have a lot of, like, the leaves are starting to change color, and there's a smell in the air, a fresh smell of the first few days of cool breezes, which we're starting to experience now already. And all of these things, as they start coming to pass, mark a time of slowing down, quieting down, calming down. But it's also a time of celebration for a lot of people, especially in the Northern Hemisphere and especially in the Americas. Like right now in October, we got carving pumpkins, trick-or-treating, and wearing scary costumes are some of the traditional time-honored things of Halloween. And Halloween is a big thing for some people. But what a lot of people don't know, and maybe you do know, I don't know, maybe, is that Halloween has its roots in an ancient Celtic festival called Samhain. Samhain is a Gaelic word, and it is a celebration. That's a little controversial when you talk about it because it has pagan origins. Sorry, Christians. And it welcomed in the harvest at the end of the summer. Basically, it was a time when people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off ghosts, because they believed that this time of year that the veil between the two worlds, the worlds of the living and the world of the dead, began to like thin and thin and thin, and eventually on Halloween night or Samhain night, they would meet right there in the middle, and it was a time for the spirits to cross over into the world of the living. Now, this is not the only time the veil thins. It does thin during the summer equinox, but in the summer equinox, it's right the opposite. The veil thins, and for those who are in the living world, it's an opportunity for them to visit the spiritual world, according to tradition. I'm just going to put that in there. Just going to put that in there for you right there. And I'm going to leave it there. So, around the 8th century, Pope Gregory III designated November the 1st as a time to honor the saints, because we had to figure out a way to pull the pagans into the church. So good old Gregory, the Pope, created All Saints' Day. Okay, we can do that. Yeah, let's go for it. So All Saints' Day was also known as All Hallows' Eve, or later became Halloween. So you see, there was a Catholic, a church tie into creating, going from Samhain to creating All Saints Day. We moved the date just over a smidgen to All Saints Day, and it became All Hallows Eve, and then Halloween. So we're going to talk about some of the traditions that we know about today and how they kind of slightly changed a little bit. Okay, so carving jack-o'-lanterns. First of all, let's get this right. Okay, pumpkins were not a thing in Celtic world. There were no pumpkins back then, and not there in that area. So in Ireland, they used turnips instead of pumpkins, and they carved those, and they put a little candle in the turnip. And let me tell you, if you've never tried to carve a turnip before, you're in for a surprise if you try, because it is very difficult. They are kind of tough. If you get the really big ones like that are really good carving size, which I suggest you do because you can't carve little ones at all. It is very difficult to do, and you have to be very patient with it. But the good thing about that is, and the really cool thing is, as the turnip begins to like slowly lose its moisture and it starts doing its decomposing thing, it actually starts shriveling up, and it starts looking like an old person kind of face thing. So that's kind of cool. But so where did this come from, though? Where did this tradition come from at all? It started with a legend of a guy named Stingy Jack, who repeatedly trapped the devil and only let him go in the condition that Jack would never go to hell. So the problem with that is that Jack was not good enough for heaven either. So when Jack died, Jack was stuck roaming the earth for the rest of his life. So the devil gave Jack a burning lump of coal as a way to be able to light his path. Jack put it in a carved turnip. You see how that works? And so eventually, as Jack roamed the earth on that day, it became tradition for other people to carve the turnip and light the lump of coal and put it in there to ward off the spirits of the dead, especially to frighten off evil spirits. So that's sort of how the pumpkin came to be. Now, the thing with seeing ghosts, and everybody has a ghost story for Halloween. Always have a good ghost story, right? There was a tradition with this that marked the new year at the end of the harvest and the beginning of winter. Celtic people believed that during the festival, the spirits walked the earth. And Christians began to introduce All Saints Day, and actually eventually fell on November the 1st, which perpetuated the idea of the living coming into contact with the dead around the same time of the year. So this is where we see all of the ghosts and so forth. Now, what about wearing scary costumes? Well, you see, that was intended to scare away the evil spirits too, and keep them from tormenting the people, because people would don these scary costumes, and they believed that would make the spirits think that the people were one of them, and they would leave them alone. So that's where that came in about. But what about this whole thing with trick-or-treating? Okay. There's a few theories about that. The first one suggests that during Samhain, that the Celtic people would leave food out to appease the spirits traveling the earth at night. I could see that, leaving an offering, a food offering to the spirits. The second theory speculates that the candy boon stems from the Scottish practice of guising, which is a secular version of souling. Generally, children and poor adults would collect food and money from the local homes in return for prayers for the dead on All Souls Day. So the geysers dropped the prayers in favor of non-religious practices with the inclusion of songs, jokes, and other trick-or-treats. Other tricks, not other treats. They would get the tricks. No, I just got that all wrong. You know what I'm saying. They would get the treats so that they wouldn't do the tricks. So then there's the third theory that argues that the modern trick-or-treat stems from another tradition that was German-American Christmas tradition, where the children were dressed in costumes and then call on their neighbors to see if the adults could guess who the identities of the children in the disguises were. That's kind of a fun idea. In this version of the practice, the children are rewarded with food or other treats if no one could identify them. That is a cool idea, actually. So there's that. Now, let's talk for a minute about the black cats, because honestly, I did not understand for a long time as a kid what black cats had to do with Halloween, because they're not very scary. They're kind of cute and cuddly, actually. But it turns out that part of the reason why cats, and black cats in particular, are part of Halloween and part of the Halloween decorum is because they are familiars, or those creatures which help and befriend witches. And so, yeah, there's a whole thing with that. I'm not really sure myself how I feel about that whole thing with the familiars. I get it and I understand it and all that, but like Hollywood has really thrown that one out there a lot. Let's talk about the colors black and orange. Now, this is something that still stems from the Celtic festival of Samhain. Black represented death of summer. Very important to understand. While orange symbolized the autumn harvest season. So you had black representing summer is going away, it's getting dark and cold. And then the orange was all of the harvest, the pumpkins, the gourds, the leaves falling, all of that. It symbolized all of these things. Now, there's some other things that I kind of feel like date back to Roman time, like bobbing for apples. That was a Roman festival thing. Playing pranks. The whole idea of that, I'm not really keen on because it comes from a tradition called Devil's Night, which is kind of that started with a bunch of religionists. And don't get me wrong, I am a believer, but when I'm talking about religionists, I'm talking about people who are not necessarily believers, but are more traditionalist. You know what I'm saying? Pranks may have started actually with May Day celebrations. but Samhain and eventually All Saints' Days also included good-natured mischief. When the Irish and Scottish immigrants came to America, they brought that with them. And there was a celebration called Mischief Night, which was part of Halloween. So that kind of became a thing. Let's talk about, though, the lighting of candles and bonfires. So here's where there is a really great story behind Samhain and the New Year, is that the bonfires represent the promise that the light would return eventually. That, yes, it was dark and cold right now, but eventually the light would return. The days would get longer again. So the bonfires were a pleasant reminder of that. So when you're celebrating Samhain or Halloween, however you celebrate it, if you do light fires or you light a candle or whatever, just remember that this is very symbolic that winter is not forever and that the dark half of the year will eventually be ending. So those are some of the traditions, and there are so many. The list just goes on and on and on that were adopted for this time of year. But I really want to get in for a few moments and talk about a couple of other things that's really good for this time of year. Remembering the ancestors, because it is Samhain and the veil is thinning. Remembering the ancestors, self-reflection, those are two things that I really focus on this time of year. Giving thanks for the ancestors, because if it wasn't for the ancestors, there would be no us, right? The here and now. So there had to be people before us to have us in the present tense. So we should always be grateful for that. The idea of self-reflection is, for some people, can be very comforting, some people not so much so. But this is a good time of year to start taking inventory of where you've come from this year to where you are now personally. It's time to reflect on the things that you want to build into your life, the things that you want to maybe accentuate, and some things that you want to deflate from your life and move out from your personal space. So that's always a good thing to do this time of year. And this is a very good time of year to do that because it is darker outside. You are spending more time inside, and there's not so much going on to distract you. So because everybody else is doing the same thing and they're keeping their distance because they're all at home there's a nice warm blankie by the heaters and the fire and watching really bad television probably, or at least scary movies, right? So this time of year, good for self-reflection, good for thanking the ancestors and remembering the ancestors this time of the year, definitely. We have a tendency this time of year, because we are shut in more and it's darker and it's colder, to get a little sad. Seasonal depression is a thing. It is a kind of a thing. For some people, it's a serious thing. And so some of the ways to be able to get around that, or to try to work through that, is to do some self-reflection for starters. Good movies, fun movies are always a good way of being able to get around that, of course. And I love sometimes just curling up with a good book and reading. That can be very fun and entertaining, especially if you get a good book or even a good series, book series that is worth checking out. It's definitely one of those things that really makes my day go by much better when I'm home alone and it's dark and cold out. So those are some really good ways of doing some stuff like that. Also, crafting. Good time of year to craft. If you like to cook, you could bake. maybe bake a pie, bake some bread, don't get too fat, maybe take a trip to the gym in the process, because, a little bit too much sweets and you have a problem before the year is over with. With that said, just remember to do all things in moderation. Always helps. So let's talk for a bit, though, about how you go about doing some of this decluttering of the mind a little bit deeper. Okay. So one of the things, again, that you can do that's always very helpful and very nurturing is to remember to light candles. Candles are very pretty. The light is very calming and soothing. If you get a nice scented candle, it can be very uplifting. And more importantly, it also reminds you of the returning of the light, right? So you want to be able to remember to light your candle every day, to be thankful and grateful that soon, very soon, the days will start getting longer and the light will return. And there's even a day set aside that is the zenith, the point, the pinpoint where the days begin to get longer. That is the summer or the winter solstice. So with the winter solstice, it is the longest night of the year. I call it the long, dark night of the soul. It's the longest, coldest, dankest part of the year. But the day after that, the night gets a little shorter. And after that, a little shorter. And after that, a little shorter. You see, there's a theme going on here. So from the solstice on, from about Yule and Christmas time, from about that period onward, the dark half of the year begins to give over to the light half of the year. So after the solstice, whenever everything is like, you've got the colors of dark blue and teal and so forth representing solstice. After that period, we have the return of the light. So from solstice on is a time of celebration of the lights returning. Kind of familiar story in Christianity with Christmas, and those of us who celebrate Yule and Christmas can appreciate the story even greater, because Yule is essentially the return of the light, and of course Christmas is the birth of Jesus, the light of the world, coming into the world. So you have a theme going on here with those two holidays, and they're very similar in that sense. So what I like to tell people whenever they ask me, so why do you celebrate Yule and Christmas? It's because Yule was kind of the foreshadowing of Christmas in a sense in the pagan world. So if you are a Christo-pagan, one who believes in the divinity of Christ, but still celebrates some of the pagan customs, and a little bit of the theology, then you can really relate to that and understand that Yule was kind of the foreshadowing, the prerequisite, if you will, the foreknowledge of the coming of the light of the world. So with that said, that's kind of why I celebrate both. And it's very comforting to me to celebrate the practice of Yule, the introspective, the turning inward, and and finding thanks and grace, but definitely finding reasons to be thankful for the returning of the light, for the food that you've had during the cold season with winter, being grateful for warmth, for a warm, safe place to be. This time of year, especially this year, there are people who are our neighbors to many of us who don't even have a place to live because of the hurricane. So for those of us who were not affected by that, finding a time during Yule to be grateful for what we have. It may not be exactly what we want, but it is what we have and what we need. Being grateful for that is a part of that process too. So let's talk a minute about the whole concept of what the return of light and what moving past some of this is, and then we'll get into the whole concept of Thanksgiving, this secular tradition of Thanksgiving. We'll talk about for a little bit, and we'll talk about the theological idea of Thanksgiving. I'm not so keen on that holiday, like for me personally, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So the returning of the light. This is the time from the solstice on, like I said, where the light is returning, where the days are getting longer again, and we start looking forward to planting and renewal and the hope of a good harvest, good things to come, the abundance, coming of abundance. And abundance does not necessarily mean money too. It means, love, happiness, peace, food, temporal needs, that kind of thing. It means the coming of all things good. So from Samhain, the new year, into Yule, we're experiencing that last few days of kind of calming down and toning down and self-reflection and all the things that go with that. And then here comes the sun, right? Here comes those days, the dog days of summer that we all complain about eventually. We come back into very quickly. Sorry, I was reading a comment that just came across my text. With that, let's go into Thanksgiving for a minute. Okay, not my favorite part of the year. Honestly, Thanksgiving has become literally sitting down, becoming a glutton, eating too much turkey, being really sleepy afterwards because turkey makes you sleepy. And then while somebody is watching a football game that you're really about half paying attention to, you go to sleep. And then you get up and you eat more. And then eventually you go home and get ready for Christmas. But some people are very decorated, so you just go home and look at the pretty Christmas lights. Or, we used to have Black Friday. They've kind of done away with a lot of the Black Friday stuff because it became such a monumental disaster over time. It actually became just a laughing joke, just a huge joke of how violent Black Friday had become and how it was just unnecessary stuff happening over things that weren't that important, really. So thank God they kind of did away with Black Friday. They still have the sales and so forth, but it's not the yeehaw, open the doors, let's make a big fiasco out of this day that it used to be. And some stores are actually closed on Thanksgiving, thank God. A lot of places are closed on Thanksgiving now, which should happen. Because even though I'm not big on it, it is a family celebration, and and families should be together that day. But they did have that tradition of Black Friday and the Black Friday sales, and which usually started on Thanksgiving. Um, Later in the evening on Thanksgiving is when it usually started, and then went into Black Friday. Um, and when I was working for Walmart, and we had that, it was like my least favorite experience of the whole year was Black Friday and the Black Friday sales, and they started doing it on Thursday night and making a big deal of it, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. It was a horrible experience. It probably made me like Thanksgiving even less. Um, and it's just not something that I really care for. But so, with that said, what is Thanksgiving really about, though? Or what should it be about? Traditionally, we're not even going to talk about the traditional part of it because the traditional part of it is BS. Um, I personally don't believe the historical propaganda behind it. I think it was a very disturbing situation that happened, to be honest with you. Um, and the truth behind the whole Thanksgiving feast, I don't believe at all. Um, but what is Thanksgiving really about? I mean, it is about giving thanks, right? It's about being grateful for what you have, being grateful for the food. The food is definitely a big part of it. If you want to wrap it back around to more of a agricultural slash pagan theology, you could be grateful for the harvest during that time, even though, because like it's literally after Samhain, so you should still have a really good supply of harvest food. And so it's a good way of setting aside a day to be grateful for the harvest, to be grateful for family, to be grateful for those who again came before you and those who are there with you now. So it is an all around day to enjoy hearth and home, and those are the good parts of Thanksgiving that I appreciate somewhat. And I believe that has a lot to do with the overall experience for a lot of people. I think that's where they come from. Now, although to be honest with you, like I said, I know a lot of people that it's all about the food and the sweets and the treats and football. And that's really what it's all about for the day for them. Hanging out with family's cool, watching the game is cool. But that's really what it seems to be all about for a lot of people, which is fine if that's what you're into. So this is a strange kind of year. It is a dark kind of time of year. It is the time of year where we kind of look at it in a little bit of dread. And at the same time, we're relieved that it's not hot. The weather can be a little bit dicey. It can be a little bit unpredictable this time of year for some of us, especially those of us that live in places like Middle Tennessee, where you get about a week of harsh snow, what we call harsh snow anyway, and can shut down entire road systems because we're just not prepared. And it's like, why are we spending that kind of money for that sort of like that 1 week? That's something that we just don't do here. So with that said, it causes a lot of questions. We have to wear more clothing, and we do the inward thing a lot more, and everything is a lot darker and just kind of, yeah. And so that's kind of really what it's all about. Excuse me. And of course, seasonal allergies. Yuck. I'm not going to go into any more because I feel like I'm just kind of ranting at this point. But I do want to encourage you guys. Keep active, keep busy, keep mentally and emotionally upbeat as best you can. Listen to upbeat music, do stuff to kind of take your mind off of the winter blahs, and just enjoy and love this time of year. Now, let me do a recap here of places you can find me online. Number one, magicaljourney.com. Go there. You will not regret it. Let me pop this up. Number two, Facebook groups and Facebook page. Look me up, like, and join. You will not regret that either. It is a good time. It is informative. And if you engage within the group and make it fun and festive, it will be. Your engagement is important, however, because I cannot engage for all of you. So remember that when you join the group. Be ready to engage, be ready to post, be ready to respond to post. Come up with some good ideas to talk about and join us. If you're on the talk, I am on there some still. I will be getting more involved with that platform again somewhat, not to the extent that I used to, but I will be on there more coming up. And of course, there is YouTube, where you are watching me from right now. I have a Tuesday recorded live show, which you are watching right now. Sometimes I have guests and I do interviews on that. Sometimes it's just me, like today. And that was mostly because I got stuck in a situation where I didn't have lights, no electricity in the office for a few days, and I didn't schedule anybody for this weekend to do a recorded show, because I wasn't sure if I was going to have everything up and running again and ready to go. But as it turns out, I do. So here I am. Do not forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you have not subscribed yet. Subscribers, liking, sharing, and commenting help me to grow and go, as another creator says. And I think that is very important to be able to grow, definitely, and move forward. So do those things and help me out. Tell your friends about me. Post my videos in places that you like to share these things with. Meanwhile, on Fridays at 7 o'clock Central Time, each and every Friday, knock on particle board. I hope each and every, depending on whether I have electricity or not. We'll say that. No, we won't. Cancel that. I'm not going to go there. We have a live every Friday, 7 o'clock Central Time, right here. Sorry. Where I discuss paranormal activity, cryptids, all kinds of fun stuff like that with other people live. And you can come in and join the chat and communicate with us, ask good questions. Don't be a booty in the chat or you will get banned, because my mods are out there and they are watching you. Even as we speak, they're watching you. Not really. So there's the live. Come check it out. Meanwhile, I am Magical Journey, aka Daniel, and the creator of the brand. Wishing you all well, and may your journey always be magical.